political support for the aims of the people, and this conflation between these two things held Stephen Murney in jail for 15 months until he came to trial, and at his trial he was fortunately found innocent, but he was detained for 15 months on basically charged with political sympathy with the aims of Republicans, which are to expel the British Army from Ireland and to unite the country. That is what they are. Of course, Republican socialists also seek to do this by socialist methods, by overthrowing capitalism as well.
So he was detained in the UK?
He was detained in the north of Ireland.
Oh, Northern Ireland.
For 15 months. In Maghaberry prison itself, where he endured much strip searching and torture and beatings at the hands of the prison warders there.
And there's still in British prisons there are strip searches and other kind of like really degrading treatment of prisoners as well existing.
Yes, in Maghaberry prison, which is the main prison in the north of Ireland, which holds the Republican prisoners, there is constant strip searching, constant denial of rights like prison visits, etc. There is a thing called the boss chair. The boss chair is something that is used to scan the body of a prisoner. It is acceptable in the state of Texas for prison visits, but it is not acceptable in the north of Ireland. Although the 2010 Maghaberry Agreement between representatives of the prisoners and the governor and the British state itself came to agreement that it should be used. The prison officers themselves said, no, we will not use it, and actually at one point the governor said to use it, and they said, look, we're not answerable to you, we're answerable to the Secret Service, the MI5. That's who tells us what to do, and we will not use this. So the constant strip searching is a method of control and humiliation. The boss chair is acceptable everywhere else, you know, so that you're not hiding something in any body orifice or some such thing. It can reveal all that.
And that contributes to a lot of trauma, I think, when you speak to ex-prisoners and you say, you know, what kind of, if you speak about your experience in terms of like what trauma they face, they do speak a little bit about kind of, you know, strip searches and that's within British prisons and how humiliating it is. So I can't even imagine how intensified it must be.
Well, it's not in all British prisons. It's only in Maghaberry prison itself, and in also it was practiced in the women's prison in Hydebank.
Oh, wow.
There was at one stage 3 women prisoners held in Hydebank. There's only one now, but it was regularly practiced there as well, which is very humiliating and absolutely unnecessary. It has a political intent and nothing else.
So my next question is, some Irish political prisoners were given amnesty, and I don't think this will be the case for many Muslim prisoners doing life here. And why does the British give certain prisoners amnesty, and what can the Muslim community do to support and work towards the liberation of those prisoners that are facing and serving life sentences?
Well, this is a very political question, so I'll give it a go.
Yeah.
The prisoners in the north of Ireland and in British jails were given amnesty on the foot of the Good Friday Agreement of August 1989. The Good Friday Agreement was basically an agreement between the Sinn Féin leadership representing the IRA and the British state to cease the armed struggle, as it was called, to hand over their stockpile of weapons and from then on to pursue their aims through Parliament, through parliamentary methods. But crucially, it wasn't just that. It accepted what they call the loyalist veto. It accepted that the problem in Ireland was not the British Army occupation of the north of Ireland. It was the fact that the loyalist community would not accept peacefully joining a united Ireland. having separated these two inseparable questions, actually, the courage of the leaders of the loyalist community, as they're called, is absolutely established by the presence of the British Army. In fact, at every turn in the situation in Ireland, say back in when Irish self-determination was first mooted in 1914, you had what was known as the Curragh Mutiny. In February 1914, the Liberal government proposed the Government of Ireland Act, a Government of Ireland Act that would allow Ireland a certain amount of autonomy. The loyalists in the north of Ireland refused to accept this and mobilised and ran weapons actually from Germany, the Larn gun running, which they were allowed to get away with. And then the British Army that was located in the Curragh camp in the south of Ireland, west of Dublin, was about to be ordered north to suppress the rising of the Orangemen, and the army refused the government instructions and mutinied. They said they would. So, and this was, of course, encouraged by the Tories, who were the opposition at the time, and the high officers of the ruling class. They simply would not tolerate anybody who would crack down on what was treasonous acts, in fact, of the loyalists, and these themselves were treasonous acts, which in an army, if you disobey the orders of the government, then that's treason, and you're liable to be in fact executed. But instead of being executed, they were rewarded with positions in the House of Lords and then praised by the establishment. So that kind of set the tone for what was, in fact, the British state itself would not allow the unity of Ireland. You had to defeat the British state before you could unify Ireland, and the loyalist community understood this, that the British state was on their side, and that reinforced their bigotry and what is the essential feature of loyalism, which is the right to discriminate. It was what they call a Protestant parliament for a Protestant people, actually quite similar to Israel, which is a Jewish parliament for a Jewish people, is it not? It is as illegitimate as the state of Northern Ireland, in my view.
Exactly that. So, in relation to the Muslim community, the amnesty question, if you can kind of touch on that a little bit.
All right. Those prisoners got their amnesty. However, the question of Muslim prisoners is in a much wider context than that of one nation. The context of Muslim prisoners is to do with the war on terror, and the war on terror is basically something that the American ruling class were seeking to do long before 9/11, and now seized the opportunity. The American ruling class know that their empire is in decline. They know that they're losing ground to the Chinese, to the BRICS countries, etc., and they seek to reverse this. One of the main fears of the American ruling class is what they call the de-dollarization of the world economy, that the dollar would no longer be the trading currency of the world. Gaddafi was proposing to replace the dollar. Saddam Hussein was proposing to replace the dollar. The BRICS are now proposing to replace the dollar as the world trading currency. This is what the American empire rests on, is that the majority, 85% of world trade is conducted in the dollar, and they are therefore able to control that. If they lose control of that, they lose control of the empire that they have. And therefore, the wars in the Middle East, the wars in Libya and Syria and everything else, are basically wars to preserve the American empire to its global hegemony, and to reverse the attacks on it. This is not a conflict that can be solved easily, or will not be solved, and in my view, before the overthrow of capitalism itself, this conflict can't be solved. So individual cases you can fight, but any type of a global Good Friday agreement like Gerry Adams got for the North of Ireland is not possible, in my view, for prisoners. For the life of me, I can't see why.
It's quite global. It's a global war, isn't it?
It's a global war, and of course it is not simply directed against the Muslims. We saw what happened in the Ukraine. This is simply against the Russian-speaking people of the.
But even that has quite a huge Muslim population. The Muslims were central to even that debate, wasn't it? The Tatar Muslims and everything. So.
They were central to that. But
they've been accused of being terrorists as well.
Yes,
so there's all sorts of quite nuances within that political context as well, I suppose. But so actually, I don't really want to get into this, but I thought I'd touch on it a little bit. But you did kind of propose to me in earlier discussion as well, and I know that you were a member of the Labour Party, and although we will have strong disagreements, because I don't agree with aligning with the establishment parties at all. I have a very strong stance against this, but you do think that, and I'm very surprised that you think that, because obviously you seem to hold very strong views in relation to Sinn Féin and kind of the disappointments there. But then the Labour Party, really? The same party that took us to the Iraq War, the same party that triggered off the war on terror, same party introducing things like the terrorism and security bill in 2015 that essentially criminalizes, it's thought crimes, like, it's and the prevent strategy and things like this. I mean, I think that they're very soft on Zionism, and it's all sorts of other more nuanced political ideas of, integrating within the system, and I don't advocate that in any way, shape or form. And also, I believe that they suspended you, didn't they?
Well, no, they expelled me. In fact, they expelled me twice.
But you still advocate in favour of
Right, let me explain. They expelled me in August 2010, basically for supporting Jeremy Corbyn's bid for leadership, and they said I was supporting an organisation whose aims were contrary to that of the Labour Party. That's how they put it.
That's exactly how I see it.
And let me explain how this went.
I think it's good.
I appealed against the expulsion, and I said, look, there's been many leaders of the Labour Party. The original founder leader, Keir Hardie, had views of revolutionary socialism. Many in the Labour Party have views of revolutionary socialism. I think I'm entitled to be in the Labour Party and hold those views. And they accepted my appeal, and I was readmitted into the Labour Party. However, some months later, a Tory blogger called Guido Fawkes produced this evidence. They first of all accused me of supporting ISIS. Which was false.
Ludicrous. Let's get real.
Which was false, actually.
Of course it's false.
What I said was I didn't support the United States bombing ISIS, which is a different thing entirely. But I didn't support anything that ISIS were doing. But I definitely wasn't going to support the United States bombing anybody. I was accused of supporting the 9/11 bombers.
And that was completely
this was false as well, but I did say I understood what drove them to do it because of what the United States had done in Muslim lands. And the third thing that I was accused of was anti-Semitism for not supporting the state of Israel. Well, this is false because what they do is they equate supporting the state of Israel with opposing the state of Israel with opposing Jewish people in general. Exactly. Now, for the Labour Party itself, you see, the Labour Party is a contradiction. The Labour Party gets the support of the working class, and it's now mainly funded by the trade unions. Its leadership have always been imperialist and pro-capitalist and hostile to the working class. But it does have a base. And that base creates great problems at certain points. and through it you can mobilise people to oppose that leadership. When Corbyn was elected, it created a great problem for the whole British establishment. A British general said that Corbyn might have to be taken out if
I think that was hugely exaggerated.
It's
hardly a threat.
Yes, but it wasn't Corbyn they were afraid of. It was the base that elected him.
Yeah.
That they were afraid of this leftist surge, and to that leftist surge that you must turn. Back in the 1920s, the Labour leaders were no better on the question of Ireland than they are now. In fact, they were worse in many ways. But they had huge problems with the sympathy of the British working class for the actual struggle in Ireland, and they had to go to great lengths to subvert conferences and to motions and everything else, and to sell out the struggle. So such was the sympathy, particularly between the middle of 1920 and the middle of 1921. And if you want to mobilise a mass base, what I would say, if you want to replace individual...
You don't have to do it through the party.
Well,
you don't have to, and I don't think it's successful personally. I think that believing in this concept that joining the institutions, you can change them from within. In fact, if anything, the institutions change you. You have to compromise. And we've seen that in Corbyn. We have seen that in Corbyn. It's very unfortunate. I mean, I knew Corbyn from my Stop the War days. You know, I was working in the office within Finsbury as well, and I know that Corbyn was, I know him prior to the whole Labour leadership, and the guy he is now, I don't recognise him, so...
He is an exceptionally weak political character, there is no doubt. And this current capitulation to the anti-Semitism onslaught by Zionism and is particularly disgusting. In fact,
it hurts his funding as well. I think
it obviously does, but nonetheless, I mean the leftist surge that elected him is still there. And we still need to relate to it. Now, I cannot, as I say, I was expelled from the Labour Party without the right of a hearing or without the right of appeal, so I couldn't make my case. And these were institutions that were set up under Tony Blair.
Yeah.
But sparking a mass movement with the support of the entire working class is a political task. And through the trade unions, and the trade unions go into the Labour Party, that you can work there in order to achieve your aims outside of the mass party of the working class.
How does that go down in Ireland? It's seen as an imperialist institution?
Well, the Labour Party leadership is, of course, but the Labour Party members are the working class. They are the people that vote for it. They are the members of the trade unions that are affiliated to it. It definitely is an arena of struggle. Whereas if you're a small left-wing group, say, trying to influence the masses, you won't get the ear of the masses.
There's a lot that's being done in Ireland as well through kind of grassroots campaigns in relation to kind of, again, exposing the government for being complicit and weak as well, you know, and it can be done here in the UK, and I think that the Muslim community are very good in this regard. You know, we've got organisations like Cage exposing British intelligence complicity in relation to drones and Guantanamo and things like this, and it's that information, isn't it? And it's a lot like what we're doing today, you know, drawing kind of in people like yourselves who have a common understanding and things like this. I mean, it's definitely a nuanced discussion to have. So our next question is in relation to the Craigavon 2. So why is this, for those that don't know about the case, so why is this a miscarriage of justice, and what is the current legal action being taken?
Well, the miscarriage of justice is over the shooting of a police constable whose name was Carroll. Basically, the two have been in prison for 8 years now, and there's very little evidence against them. The majority of evidence is provided by a